Hello and welcome to another weekly update. We are post build, so kind of catching up on some of the announcements and things that came out of build. I won't cover all of them, kind of all in one go because other people are doing that already, and there's plenty of good Microsoft blog posts that kind of summarize all that stuff. You can find all those over at the Microsoft Tech community, it was kind of interesting as well to see some of the things being announced that quietly went GA a couple of weeks before that I've blogged about. So I've had a couple of people reach out and say thanks for that, so that's appreciated. Thank you very much. But it's always worth going through the sessions and picking out those things that aren't necessarily announced in lights, but are announced within the sessions, because that's kind of somewhat where some of the detail is. One of those things led to a blog post I did this week around soon the ability for developers to be able to charge money for apps in the Teams store. Now this is exciting for a few reasons. First of all, so as it is right now, if you're putting apps into the App Store, for Microsoft Teams, you cannot charge for them. They are free apps. Now you can wrap your own subscription around that, you can have your own licensing model, but you can't use any kind of licensing subscription model from Microsoft like you would, for instance, in like the Apple App Store. That's going to be changing. Monetization of apps and of services is something that already exists in the Azure Marketplace and in AppSource, and it looks like some of that goodness is going to come into the Teams App Store. Details are a little light at the moment. It was just kind of announced in passing in a session kind of all about what's new in the Teams platform, but it's going to be interesting for a few reasons. So it's going to be good, very good for indie developers, small teams of developers who are thinking, yeah, maybe we should move our thing to Teams, but we're not really sure if it's worth it. We're not sure if it's worth the investment. Well, being able to wrap some monetization around that maybe does make it worthwhile. I think we'll see a higher quality bar of apps as well. So we'll see it being worth the investment time for developers putting apps into the Teams App Store, because they'll be able to make a bit back as well. It'll be interesting to see. We have no details at the moment about exactly what that monetization model looks like, whether it is flat fee, whether it's a subscription-based thing, whether you'll be able to bring your own licensing. So lots of things to be worked out still. I think it feels like it's still quite early days, but it's good. It's a good thing. It's a good evolution of Teams. It's a good evolution of the Teams platform as a platform for development, and it makes it a more mature environment, and it makes it more worthwhile, I suppose, for developers and organizations to bring their apps and their services into Teams. So that was announced at Build in a session. So I've got a blog post, you can see the screenshot where it was announced, and I've also taken the transcript as well, because it's worth reading exactly what Larry Jin said at that point as he talked about it. And it's worth saying as well, Microsoft are excited by this as well, so that's always good as well. Okay, so something else that happened this week is a new feature showed up in the Microsoft 365 roadmap, which is a good place to go if you want to figure out what's happening with Teams or with any of the Microsoft 365 services actually. But I tend to keep an eye on the Teams one, and I tend to keep an eye on what is happening in development in Teams. If you're curious about that, and if you want to follow on for yourself and get the same access that I do, and finding out when things go into development, go and search for a blog post I did all about RSS feeds around Microsoft 365, because Microsoft 365 has an RSS feed, but it is a bit all or nothing. I have built a service that allows you to filter on that RSS feed and just get like a mini RSS feed that only has the things you care about. So if you only care about Microsoft Teams features in development and you just want to get pinged when that happens, you can build your own RSS feed around that. Anyway, that wasn't what I wanted to talk about. The feature itself that arrived this week is something that will soon let you share your system audio in Teams. Now this is important for a few reasons. First of all, it's a real pain point that happens in the real world. I see this weekly with my co-workers, with my colleagues, people presenting sales decks and wanting to do product demos. They've got product videos. They want to show those videos as part of the presentation, and the sound doesn't reach the other participants because what Teams is sending as sound is the audio from your headset or from your microphone or whatever else it is, not your system audio. So this is a change, a feature that will allow system audio to be shared in Teams meetings. So again, details fairly thin on the ground about this. I'm interested to know whether or not it will be a kind of either or, so either you're sending your headset audio or you're sending your system audio, or whether it will be more of a blend. So you can say, well, actually I want to fade, so I want to have the system audio, but I also want to be able to speak over it as well. I have played in this area before. I've got a blog post that I'll link to talking about this, and there's some other links there as well. So I've done some stuff in the past with like an HDMI to USB device, which has kind of solved this problem, but it's quite an expensive way to solve the problem. So it's good to see this coming into the software. What would be really nice, so this is now speaking as a developer, not as not as somebody using, not necessarily as a user. What would be really good as a developer would be the ability to make that kind of switch sort of programmatically on the client, because I can foresee useful applications where the application would want to automatically send audio into a Teams meeting. Let's pick a random made up example that I've just thought about. So let's say you wanted to keep on top of your meetings and you wanted to notify all your attendees every 10 minutes so that they were aware of how long they were spent gossiping in meetings. So what we wanted to do is just ping a sound every 10 minutes. So programmatically, it would be kind of cool to have that as a client-side application and just programmatically switch the audio to system audio, play your ping, and then switch it back again to the headset. So things like that would be cool to do programmatically. I don't see it coming initially, if I'm totally honest. I think it will get built into the client first, and then maybe in the future we'll see. But this is also a feature that Zoom has. So Zoom and is obviously a competing product to Teams. So I imagine Microsoft are always kind of looking and seeing what those competing differences are and trying to kind of level that playing field up a bit. So that's exciting. We're going to look out for that. It's currently marked as in development with a release date of May. So that's this month. So like that all sounds fairly kind of maybe positive. We're kind of just going to have to see, I think. All right, other things happening. So there's a blog post I'm going to link to from ZDNet, and it's all about the Fluid Framework. Now I tweeted about this during build. Fluid Framework is something new that is not ready yet, but they kind of showed a bit about it and they talked a bit about it, and it's not something you can try yet, but it's coming soon. I think it's one to keep an eye on. It's a kind of fusion of collaboration and programming and developer tooling and usability. It's a bit fluid right now, hence sorry the pun. But it's more of a document model to allow developers, so authors, creators, to build documents that contain collaborative building blocks. So think being able to embed a Word part that you can have 10 different people all editing the same Word file at the same time in real time. And it sounds a bit like OLE, I guess. But there's a good write-up about it on ZDNet as well, so you should go and have a look at that. It's going to get integrated into things like Word and Teams as well, and Outlook. There's going to be an external way of using it for outside developers as well. So it's all a bit coming soon, but it's worth keeping an eye on. It's worth just remembering that name, Fluid Framework. Maybe digging into it a bit if you want to do some research and be totally ahead of the curve. Might be interesting as well. All right, that's everything I wanted to talk about this week. I am on holiday next week. I'm still going to do a weekly update, I think, but that probably I would imagine social media traffic for me will be on the down. I'm going to enjoy Disneyland with the family, so that should all be fun. But I hope you have a great week next week, and I will speak to you again next time.